join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. The palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thank you for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? Those of you here for the first time, what brings you here?
I'm here to learn.
Simple enough to learn. Anything?
Yeah, anything. Detachment, more about Buddhism. I've been doing a lot of self-exploration, trying to find some more inner peace amongst the chaos of the world.
Yeah. Aren't we all, right? Well, welcome. Glad you're here. Who else? First time? Why?
Curiosity.
Yeah.
Walk by there
Every day for how long?
5 years.
5 years. I just want to point that out. Probably every day for 5 years and maybe 3 years before we said hello, and then finally here you are. Takes a while, but glad you're here.
Community. I've read a lot about Buddhism for a long time, but I've always been kind of on my own and realized that there's probably a need for community.
Yeah. It's kind of scary going to new places, right? Especially stuff like this. Some weird religious, philosophical thing with strange people. You know, a lot of cults out there. Like, there's some weird stuff. Yeah. We're not that, so don't worry. But glad you're here.
I come to the recovery sangha on Sundays. So
Yeah.
I just want to get to know the Buddha and just dive deeper.
Nice. How's Sunday working for you? Helping?
Very good.
Yeah. Good. Glad you're here. Welcome. Anybody else new? A couple hands over here. Yeah.
I'm here for the wisdom of the Buddha.
Yeah. Beautiful. Welcome.
To find inner peace and to develop a deeper understanding of myself and the world.
Yeah. Beautiful. So for those of you here all the time, have any of you found inner peace yet?
Okay.
I just wanted to set the bar really, really low. For those thinking that like all of a sudden Saturday at the Dharma Bum Temple is going to give you inner peace. I think it will definitely slowly over time, the peace within all of the chaos. That's really kind of what many of us are seeking, craving, desiring, looking for, is a sense of peace. Even if that sense of peace is like a minute, 5 minutes, whatever it is, any sort of peace and quiet that we can get in our lives is very often more than what we roam around with all day long. And Buddhist teachings, I believe, are really set up for that. They're really set up for us to, it's often referred to as medicine. You know, you have a headache, you take a couple Advil, the headache goes away. The Dharma, Buddhist teachings, really is kind of an example of medicine, that if we put these teachings into our lives get a little calmer, a little gentler, a little simpler. But nobody else is going to do that for you. You know, that's the practice, is that we on our own have to figure out, how do we take this medicine? How do we take these teachings? The interesting thing, which is very common, where people say, you know, they've been reading Buddhism for a long time and then finally show up. I mean, there's the triple gem, right? The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the community. And it's not just the two. And often we can read and read and read and study and all that stuff. But then to engage in community, to engage in practice, to engage with others who are also struggling and trying to figure out how do we integrate this stuff into our lives, is really an important practice, and also a difficult one. So to those who are here for the first time, welcome. I was going to point out one thing which popped into my head as I was doing the offering. And, you know, very often people ask questions about my offerings or how we open up here, things like that. There's one specific piece that people don't usually ask about. And very often it's because a lot of people that come here, this is their first introduction to Buddhism. So they don't necessarily have anything else to compare it to or relate it to. But if you notice, I ask people to join palms. I do my offerings. We recite the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, taking refuge. I do my offering to the medicine Buddha. And then when I turn around, at that moment, I then say, can I put the palms down? Anyone ever ponder why at that moment I've asked us to join palms? We've taken refuge. I've done the offerings to the Buddha. I've done my offering in my mind, in my heart, to the medicine Buddha. And then once that's done, I then say, you can put your palms down. Any guess as to why I do that? Anyone ever pondered that, other than probably Meredith? Still trying to figure out the striking bell thing.
My birthday's coming.
Yes. Any guesses as to why I would do that? Yeah.
To put an end to that beginning ritual.
Yes.
At least that's what it feels like.
Yes, absolutely. But why at that specific point is what I'm getting at. And I think this is a really, important thing, especially for those who are new to Buddhism, to keep in mind. But why at that specific point, though? Because I'm seemingly maybe not done, or am I? What am I kind of drawing a line between?
Coming to us, and now you're part of the Sangha again.
Maybe the first bit, you're engaging with the Buddha, and then you turn to engage with us.
Mm-hmm. And so why would I end it right there and not just have you all continue to join palms while I come here and sit down? What would that potentially seem like?
That you're a guru or something.
That I'm the guru or something. That moment, that offering, that reverence is about me or to me. And I say that for many people here who this would be relatively new to if you don't have an experience with what I call cultural Buddhism, right? Where it very often is Tibetan Buddhism and many schools of Buddhism with monks and nuns and lamas and things like that. As soon as that individual would walk in, you go to traditional cultural Buddhist temples, everybody would rise. Everybody would join palms. And you're paying reverence and respect to whom? That person. And so for me, that moment is an opportunity to say, look, I've done the offerings and we've kind of done it symbolically together. But at that moment that offering is done, I then want the palms dropped because I don't want, you're not joining palms to me or for me. And so if your palms continue, it's almost symbolic as you are waiting for me to begin to come in and sit down and get settled. And then the lama, the monk, the nun, the guru, the master, whoever would say, okay, you can put your palms down, as if you were doing it for them. And I have respect in that lineage and that tradition. It's my background and I've done it for 20, 25 years. So I can appreciate that. But in Dharma Bum kind of world, we don't want that reverence or respect towards the person or the person sitting here. Because then you're putting the power in what? That individual. And if any of you, especially those who are maybe brand new to Buddhism, if you're looking for somebody else, another person or another place or another thing, to have the answer, to give you that inner peace, to help you deal with all your mess, we're just sharing the Dharma. But ultimately, who has to do it? You do. It's on you. And that's good news or bad news, depending upon how hard you want to work in, figuring out your misery, right? So that's really the challenge is, are we willing as practitioners to work at that? Or are we just looking for someone else to give us the answers so that we have all our problems solved? And for me, Buddhism is just, we'll get back to questions after. For me, Buddhism is just a mirror. It's just a mirror. And at that moment that that's done, to me, we've paid our respects, made our offerings, and then there's a separation, I'm not your answer. I'm not your solution. I'm not your problem solver. Your problems are yours. My problems are mine. And this practice is not about looking at somebody else to fix those for you. And the last thought before we start the meditation, it is, I think, a message that in Western culture with Buddhism, and for me having a Taiwanese Buddhist background, in Western culture, that message, I don't think translates and gets carried over very well. I think it is very often seen as this kind of guru-based devotional thing, the way Buddhism tends to be shared in the West, where a lot of Western people really are wanting you to serve them and praise them and, do their laundry and cook for them and all those types of things. And so I'm very sensitive to making sure that we don't, in Buddhist practice, allow Western culture to abuse what I think is a really beautiful monastic tradition. But it can be abused in a Western context, like many things. So, we'll do questions on this stuff after if you have. But with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. For those who are joining virtually, thank you for showing up. Glad you're here. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, just trying to sit up straight, if comfortable. If you need to move, simply move. Most important, especially if you're new, you're not going to shut your mind off. You won't go blank. You won't empty your thoughts, and you won't think nothing. Your mind will race. I'll say things periodically to bring you back to present moment. Most important, do not expect anything. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with your eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from your practice, just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. In with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. Realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpatti, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This is not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment is filled with conflict, chaos, difficulties, challenges. This is life. This practice is learning to be with life as it arises and not running from things, which is where many of us have spent so much of our lives. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do every moment. For me, I try not to complicate Buddhist teachings. I think the very basic, fundamental, core practice is incredibly difficult to apply and integrate into our lives. They say he taught the same thing for 45 years, 84,000 different ways. But ultimately, it all came down to watching the nature of your own mind, becoming aware of your thoughts, becoming aware of your words, and becoming aware of your actions. That never changes. And that's incredibly difficult. The practice of thinking kind thoughts, speaking kind words, and doing kind deeds all the time, 24/7. That's the foundation of Buddhist teachings. Everything stems from that. It is the nature of your mind. And that's difficult. Because often when we look at the nature of our mind, it's not pleasant. You know? I can't speak for any of you, but my mind is not pleasant. I've been doing this a long time. I gave up a long time ago on my mind ever being pleasant. The practice is to watch the nature of the mind and be mindful of what you do with it. Because your thoughts create your words, which create your actions. Not always in that exact order, but pretty close. So this practice for many years is just watching the nature of what your mind does. And understanding the impermanent nature, as the Buddha taught, of all phenomena, including thoughts. This may shock many of you, but you don't have to act on every thought you have. You don't have to speak to every thought you have. You don't have to respond immediately or at all to every social media post you disagree with. It is possible to read things and think things and become aware of things and observe them before you respond. And you may find that you don't need to respond at all. And you may find that you absolutely need to respond. But when you respond in any way, is it coming from a place, as the Buddha taught, of loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity? Is it coming from a place of generosity, compassion, and wisdom? All these kind of key buzz Buddhist words. Or is it coming from a place of greed and anger and ignorance? The world is a mess. Sometimes more so than others, but it's always been a mess. And it will always be a mess. But just because the world is a mess does not mean you have to be a mess. And the world being a mess should not be an excuse for you to say, well, the world's a mess, so I'm a mess. No. Don't be a mess. Train your mind to observe the nature of all phenomena, understand the impermanence of it, understand your attachments to your views, understand that you think most likely your views are correct. Most people don't come into this practice thinking all their views are wrong. They come in thinking their views are right. And because you're attached to your views being right, you suffer. Ultimately, this isn't about your views being right or wrong, or anyone's views being right or wrong. It's understanding that everybody has different views. And the fact that the world is not operating according to your views is actually more of your suffering. So many people show up at places like this. So much of their suffering is more so because the world is not responding to how they want, as opposed to what's happening actually impacting them. And of course, our own individual places of privilege, which will vary, I of which have all of them, impacts that as well. So much of our suffering isn't even from anything happening directly or indirectly. It's coming from our attachment to views and the world not working how we think it should. And as soon as you recognize the world is never going to work how you want it to, and you embrace how the world is and learn to dance with that, with kindness and compassion, your life will change. And then you can go into the world and create change, because it needs it. But you can do it from a place of love and kindness and not from hatred and anger. So with that, I'll pause. Always really prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice. To those joining virtually, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I don't think I welcomed you at the beginning, so my apologies, but thanks for showing up. Feel free as you are to say hello. If you have any questions, put them in the chat box. I'll do my best to respond. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning for questions. I was going to come back to you anyways. I didn't know if you still wanted to go there. Yeah.
That's right. No, the question changed, that's all.
Okay. That's what I was hoping for. And so my teacher always said, when you have questions, don't look for answers. Change your question. Because what that means is we're cultivating a different view, a different perception, maybe a deeper understanding of things. But go ahead.
Should one be worried about causing someone suffering based off their words or actions, or is the other person responsible for their own suffering?
Both. So to repeat that or paraphrase for those virtually maybe didn't hear it, should one be worried? The question was, should one be worried about their actions impacting other people's suffering, or is other people's suffering in essence up to them? Is roughly what you're asking. And the reason I say both is, I think from a practice standpoint, it's both. What I mean by that is, it can potentially be, I don't mean to say that you're asking it this way, but it can potentially be very dangerous and dismissive to say, well, I'm just going to treat you like crap, and if that bothers you, that's your fault, right? This idea of this suffering that we cause is not to ignore the fact that, yes, our actions absolutely impact others. At the same time, everybody else is responsible for their own reaction to every situation, but to not discount how much we can and do impact that situation, right? I mean, if I walk up to you, Owen, right now and punch you, odds are you might not be too happy with that. But if I walk up to you now and I say hello and give you a hug and ask you how you're doing, odds are you might respond better. The choice of how you respond is still up to you. But I absolutely can impact that. And so the practice is to go into every situation, again, with loving kindness, compassion, all those words I was talking about, but not attached to other people's reactions. The danger is the wrong word, but the challenge here is to understand that anyone here ever been really kind and nice and done wonderful things for people and it wasn't met with such a beautiful response? So in that practice, what we are doing is we have now become attached. We now have an expectation that says, well, I've treated you with kindness. Why are you being so harsh to me? The flip side of that is have we ever treated people with harshness and anger or frustration, and yet it's actually met with more love and kindness? So treating people with kindness doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to end well. So the practice of non-attachment is to treat people with kindness regardless of how they respond. And at the same time, I'm repeating myself now, but at the same time knowing that we absolutely influence the behavior of others. And to watch that, you know. Yeah. What else? There's a question here. It says, did the Buddha have thoughts on meditating in a noisy, crowded, or chaotic external environment? Yeah, good question. So very often there's this idea, especially for Western folks, and if you're new to meditation or Buddhist practice, there's this idea that you have to create this perfect, peaceful, serene environment. And they definitely help, absolutely. But that's not the world. And if we are spending all of our time trying to create the perfect environment to meditate in, you know, the right candles and the right incense and the right lighting and the right music and the right direction, you know, all these things, then what happens when we don't have all that? And to your question specifically about, you know, the Buddhist thoughts and the way he taught, most people would not realize that he brought his disciples to the charnel grounds to meditate on decomposing bodies. Now, it probably wasn't a noisy environment, but to your question, it was definitely not peaceful. It wasn't calm necessarily. It was bodies decomposing. Most people are not going to meditate on decomposing bodies. But that's where he brought his disciples, because he wanted them to understand, one, that the impermanent nature of all phenomena begins with us. I mean, that our lives, to me, that's why incense sticks, I think, are beautiful if you're into incense to meditate with, because you watch as the incense, if you meditate with your eyes open, you watch the incense stick as it burns. And to me, that is us. We have been lit. In every moment, every breath, we are one moment closer to becoming ash. We are as impermanent as anything. That's where it begins. And then all of our views and our attachments and our judgments and our critiques and our self-doubt and our fears and our worries and all the things that cause so much suffering stem from the greatest attachment, which is this attachment to the self. We are going to die. It could be today. It could be 100 years from now. But at some point in time, we will cease to exist. And so many of the things that we are stressed about and anxious about and worried about, yes, many of them are large things that are really important and really matter. And many of them are not. And for many people, so much of what destroys us all day long is not the big, heavy things. It's the little stuff. The traffic, the sandwich that wasn't made properly, your steak that wasn't prepared well done enough, you know, your coffee that didn't have enough pumps of whatever you wanted in it. You know? All these little things, 5 o'clock freeway, you know, 8:05 traffic, the way your shirt looks on you, right? All these little things that everybody's so worried about. I mean, they wore robes. That was it. The Buddha said, I'm done with my princely attire as a prince. And he put on a robe, had 2 of them. Washed one, wore one. That was it. Pretty simple. Now, again, this practice is not for us to wear robes, but to look at how attached we are to the physical nature of our body and what we wear, as if it matters. We live in a culture, in a world, and in a society where we try to match our socks with our belt, with our tie. And billions of dollars are spent telling us what we should look like and what we should wear and what we should eat and where we should go. Every magazine, social media ad, billboard, everything, right, is telling us what we should do. And the Buddha said, let's meditate on these bodies, because that one day will be us. And if you can embrace that, then to your question, even specifically to noise and crowded, chaotic external environments, all the noise falls away. There is no chaos. There is no crowd. This practice is about observing sensation of breath, and everything else falls away. Zen Master Dogen would say, abiding in sensation of breath, body and mind fall away. So, environment, quiet or loud, hectic or not, abiding sensation of breath, and you can roam anywhere, and you're not attached to the external environment. It's why often, many of you have been here a long time. I love, a couple of years ago when our neighbors had the dog, and we all got to washing the dog, right around 11:20, right as our meditation was kicking in, they took the dog out to wash the dog, We all got to listen to the dog bath outside, which was really wonderful. Now they just adopted, probably Maurice and his husband, they just adopted a 3.5-week-old baby. And now we get to listen to the beautiful cries of the baby, right? Now, if you come here thinking like, oh no, it's a baby, I want quiet, then you're going to be really pissed off. But if you understand that it's like, here's this beautiful couple that brought this baby into their lives, and I met Liam like 3.5 weeks old, we bonded, Liam, and it was a pretty beautiful moment. Like, you get to experience the joy that this family now has. But if you just hear it as a crying baby, you're like, it's just a crying baby, It was funny the other day, Maurice said, I hope Liam doesn't disturb you all too much with the crying. And I said, I hope our silent meditation doesn't disturb you too much. Like, we are attached to thinking that, and again, to your question, that like, we need quiet. The chaos is in your mind. Deal with that. And there is no noise. There's just sounds that occur. That's all.
So part of what brought me here was I had been engaging in a personal meditation practice to deal with a lot of negative emotions, chaos, seeing things as noise, but maybe needing to bring into perspective. And I was keeping with it for long sessions as much as I could, trying to observe. And I think for a little bit, there was a point where I experienced some kind of, ego death briefly. And while I think initially I felt some freedom from what I was trying to seek distance from, or just I find that in the weeks since or months since, it's left me feeling very unmoored and unmoored and just very unanchored in the world. And I think that has been causing me some suffering. I suppose that's also just attachment to self, right? So I was wondering, things just don't feel or look the same as they did before. I was wondering if you had thoughts on my share.
Yeah. No, definitely. And just to paraphrase those in here, you had a practice going for a long time with meditation practice, dealing with some heavy stuff, and you feel like you got to a place almost where, you were trying to kind of detach from things. You, in your words, said you experienced a bit of ego death. But since you kind of stopped that, you almost feel a little detached. You said in your opening share earlier, you said detached, almost feeling kind of cut off from. So is that fair, brief paraphrase? Yeah. So a couple things. One, I'll say this first always, if 1,000 people lead you in meditation, they'll lead you 1,000 different ways. If they lead you or show you or teach you meditation, they're all going to lead you differently. None of them necessarily right or wrong, good or bad. Different, we like different foods, different places, different things. We're going to like different meditation practices. So I don't want to, what I'm about to say, I want to be very clear that just because I'm going to come from my own personal practice and my understanding of Buddhist meditation doesn't mean that there aren't other ways to meditate that could be beneficial. Now the catch also is that from what you just said is maybe it was in your mind at the time beneficial, and now it's like almost having the opposite effect on you. And I think from the very brief, words that you shared, I don't find that, for me personally, when I look at Buddhist teachings, as necessarily a beneficial practice, because it sounds as if almost like you were using it, and you said the word and referenced it a couple times, like you were trying to detach from things. And this idea of ego death, which is very much, I hear it floated around a lot more nowadays. For me in Buddhist practice, what I've learned is not to try to destroy the ego or kill the ego, but to understand our ego, to understand how it can benefit us and harm us. And dealing with situations, so many people in here dealing with trauma, past trauma, present trauma, future trauma, generational trauma, so much trauma going on. And for me as a practice, I'm a fan of very basic shamatha Buddhist teachings. Anapanasati Sutta, he said, if you're breathing in and taking a short breath, know you're breathing in and taking a short breath. Breathing out, taking a long breath, know you're breathing out, taking a long breath. Observation of sensation of breath and an awareness of thoughts that arise. So I think it's important to not try to detach from any stories in your head, any thoughts about what are presently there or past experiences, but to begin to observe them and become friends with them and learn from them and experience them because they occurred and they happened. This idea of, often like, without looking, can you see what's on the wall behind you? No. Why not? You're not looking at it, but is there a wall behind you? And is there, if I say, now turn around and look at the wall, what do you see? You see stuff on the wall, right? So to me, this idea of meditation and thoughts arising and dealing with past stuff, that's what it is. That I think we should be able to look at past stuff and thoughts that arise and see how we can learn from it, benefit from it, use it in our lives, and not try to just destroy it and bury it and suppress it. Because what's going to happen is if we do that, I don't want to pull this too much into Western psychology stuff, but then you get the Freudian stuff where what you suppress is just going to come back that much stronger. So I don't see meditation as an opportunity to kill or destroy anything. I see it as an opportunity to observe and understand the nature of all thoughts and all experiences and how they've impacted you. So there's also nothing wrong with, if you found a meditation practice you did for a while and it was beneficial, find a different one. Like go onto YouTube and Google meditation. You'll find 1,000 different ones and see ones that maybe are beneficial for you, that alter kind of that path you were on. Yeah. Does that help at all? Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Sure. What else? Yeah, I see a hand. Yeah.
So this is extremely related, I think. But I guess sometimes I wonder, as somebody like with anxiety, when I meditate, I'm able to kind of escape the anxiety, and it feels kind of like a form of escapism potentially. And then I stop meditating, and the anxiety is less, but it's still there. So I guess, is that correct, or should I be exploring?
Yeah, very similar question, similar response, and similar to that. So your question, for those who didn't hear it, was around anxiety, and when you use meditation, you're using it almost to escape from anxiety, but then when the meditation's done, like, hello, anxiety, right? And so for me, even going back to my example of the Advil, right? If I continued with that kind of train of thought, which brings me to this, is yes, we take 2 Advil as an example for a headache. You may meditate to deal with anxiety, right? Half the people here are in therapy, half the people here are therapists, and half of them are in therapy. And therapists nowadays in our Western world are like, you need this, and meditation, right? Not everybody, but so many people get sent here for stress and anxiety. They say, go meditate, go meditate, go meditate. Meditation doesn't fix your anxiety. I hate to break it to you, right? In my experience, it will help you with anxiety in the moment. But here's the thing, going back to the Advil. Yeah, you can take 2 Advil every single day to get rid of a headache, but wouldn't it make more sense to figure out why you're getting the headache to begin with? And that's where Western kind of manipulation of meditation and psychology is just throwing meditation at you as like this be-all, end-all fix for anxiety and stress and fear. And I'm glad they are. But in this context, it gives us an opportunity to look a little bit deeper, which I'm just introducing to you now. I'm not going to solve now, but to explore, okay, what's really going on with this anxiety? Is meditation healthier than a lot of other options that we turn to for anxiety or stress or anger or sadness, depression? Of course, it's a healthier option, but ultimately the practice is to live to where you don't have the anxiety and you don't need the Band-Aid anymore. Meditation is just a Band-Aid. Advil is just a Band-Aid. And sometimes we need that Band-Aid because it'll cover that wound and keep it safe. But the wound can go away. And to me, that's what Buddhist practice is. But sometimes for the wound to go away, you got to open it. Even coming back to that, you got to open it, you got to look at it, you got to understand it. And when anyone ever had a wound? When you open it, how's it feel? It hurts. I think our heart and minds are very much that way. And we often want to escape, right? Healthy, unhealthy escapes, and meditation is on the healthy category. But I think this, especially around anxiety, one of my favorite things to ask here is, does anyone in the room like to control people, places, or things? Do you like to have, yeah, so the smile pretty much gives it away. I've been asking that question for years. There's the cause of your anxiety. Meditation will begin to help you understand in present moment what you're working on is surrendering control. We all have elements of control and safety that we want, and we should have. I'm not suggesting we abandon that. It keeps us safe and alive, right? But to begin to understand what is this endless, often, desire and need to try to control things and people and places that is then leading to anxiety. And behind control comes this Buddhist practice of this attachment to self that says, I am important and I need everything to meet my demands and to work exactly how I want it to. Anyone in here want the world to work how you want it to? And expecting every person and place and thing to operate exactly how you want it to. Yes, that's where we're at. That's why we're here. And when it's not met, we get scared and afraid. And so we try to control it even more. And then we panic and fear. And then all these things like anxiety come from that. So it really is kind of this deep dive into understanding, why am I trying to control things? What am I so attached to? What am I so afraid of? Those things need to really be drawn out. But the temporary fix of meditation will help you moment to moment. But as I often say, right, so you can finish meditation here, as we wrap up here in a few minutes, you're going to go out back there to the world. That world doesn't care that you just finished your meditation. They're going 1,000 miles an hour. You jump on that freeway, they don't care how calm and quiet and still you are. They're going 1,000 miles an hour and you're quickly going to get wrapped up. So that's what I talk about after meditation. We're trying to close the gap to where how you feel now, right when you finish meditation, is closer to how you feel always. So then the chaos of the world, the craziness of the world, the business of the world, the anger and hatred in the world, the division in the world, all the things that are such a mess right now and have always been a mess, you are okay. That's what this practice is. Doesn't fix or control other things. It helps you deal with you. And that's why it's so fun. So we'll do one more before we close. I think there was a hand here. Yeah.
Just wondering, in Buddhist philosophy, is there a concept of a justified use of violence?
Nice, light, easy question. So in Buddhist philosophy, is there a case for justified violence, right? The simple, well, let me start with this. I don't know about you, but I'm an unenlightened, ignorant fool. And I'm not just saying that to sound humble and have people say like, oh, you're so wise. No, like I live with this head every day, okay? And I'm not gonna pretend, this was part of the practice because for me as a practitioner growing up, filled with anger and hatred and rage and pissed off at everything, I was really good at justifying everything. So even if I said to you, I'll come back to the question, but even if I said to you, yes, whose wisdom are you using to justify that? Whose? Whose wisdom would you be using to justify your violence?
It could be mine, it could be the state.
Nope, let's stick with the first answer. Yours. Because to say the state, do you do everything the state says?
No.
No. So you are manipulating and justifying, since you're asking a question, I'm going to pick on you, right? You would be in this situation, as I would, right? Manipulating what you think is justified and using that as your basis for moral, ethical behavior, right? I don't trust my wisdom to do that because I'm attached to my views and my perceptions. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, freedom from suffering, nirvana, is freedom from views, which means we have our views and everybody else has their views. Now, to your question about justified, there's a story where Devadatta, the Buddha's cousin, came to kill him, right? And the short story is, he calmed him down, taught him compassion and love, and forgave him. I've also spent 15 years working, doing meditation, Buddhist practice in military populations. And I'll never forget Smitty, a dear friend of ours from Temple. To sum up, she's a veteran, many tours, helicopter pilot, many combat tours. And when I started doing military work, I would speak with her and talk about it because I just had interesting thoughts around it. We often think of military and we think of, for me at least, killing people. And she said to me, Jeff, most people join the military don't join the military because they want to kill. They join the military because they want peace. And there are different avenues for achieving that. I'm not one to judge who and why and what people do. And I also understand that each person carries their own karma, meaning their own actions throughout their day. So whether one thinks it's justified or not doesn't take away the action. Justification does not excuse or mean that we don't bear the nature of killing. So the justification of it is kind of irrelevant, right? You have a responsibility as a Marine sniper. Not my place to judge who or what they do or why they're doing it. They've chosen that path. That's their path, and I will support them in any way I can to be at peace. They have to live with their choices, just as each individual. Basic precept, Buddha taught, do not harm, do not kill. But sometimes harming and killing happens. So I would, as a closing thought, I would caution, again, I'm not saying you're going there, but I would caution us using this like hardline Buddhist teaching to justify why people do what they do or not. And look at what is the intention behind each individual's action. It's a tough one though. So that's the best non-answer I can give you.
Attention and responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, we carry that, like I said, I've been working with active military folks and veterans for 15 years, coming back from combat tours with PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, working on getting cleared so they can go back to combat. And they're trained to kill. That's their job, right? They carry whatever they carry. Yeah. And they're doing it because they want a safe, peaceful world to live in. Not because they want to harm people, for the most part. Yeah. So, all right, I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Mark and Pam, who suffers at this time. May they all be at peace and free from suffering. All right, a few quick announcements before y'all head out. Thank you for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night, different practices going on, different people leading in a different Buddhist tradition. I think one of the best things around here, every Thursday, 4:30, we do a food distribution program. We prepare gourmet vegetarian meals, also known as peanut butter and jelly, and we feed people who sleep on a street. So anytime you think your life sucks, prepare sandwiches and feed people sleeping on a sidewalk, and it tends to put things into perspective. If it doesn't work for you, keep showing up until it does. That's also a really beautiful kind of social environment to hang out with people, make sandwiches for an hour, and then head downtown together. So it's a very nice socially engaged practice as well, to engage socially. A couple things out of the ordinary. Pride Parade, or just out of normal schedule. Pride Parade is a week from today. So Dharma Bum Temple will again be marching the Pride Parade. If you are marching, or if you want to march, you can go to the website, top right, it'll say Pride Parade 2025. You can RSVP there, or at this point, just show up. But the RSVP helps because it gives us an idea of how many. And we're going to meet here at 10 o'clock. So however you can figure out getting into the area, be here at 10 o'clock. And then together, we will walk over to where our walk-off, step-off spot is, which is in front of the LGBT Center on Center Avenue, Center Drive. But meet here at 10 o'clock, and then we'll walk over there. So that is Saturday. Monday morning, we have sworn for all of eternity that we will help clean up Balboa Park the day after the Pride Festival. So it's an incredible 2-day weekend, and then Balboa Park is a mess. So Monday from 7 to 5, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. we'll be cleaning. 2 shifts. If you want to do 7 to noon or noon to 5, that info is also on the website, but we can definitely use the volunteer help on Monday as well. And then last thing about that is tomorrow at 2 o'clock, we'll be making signs for Pride Parade. So lots of fun, cool, Pride and Buddhist and Zen and funny, dumb jokes that you can tie all that together around from a Buddhist lens. We'll be making the signs tomorrow at 2 o'clock, which is fun. So we have them left over from last year, but we're going to make some new signs, for those that didn't qualify and get into the sign competition last year. So otherwise, thank you for dealing with the bit of a broken sidewalk in the front there. Just an update on that. The garden is going to be still 3-4 weeks till we're done, but just the walkway, we'll be pouring concrete on Monday. By Wednesday, we should be fine to come back to entering through the temple. But for now, everybody, again, please carefully, slowly pile down the stairs and go out for Buddha for you. Just gather shoes carefully, slowly, and head out the same way. So thank you all for being here. Be well.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.